Hello there, I'm Scotty. You're not. Welcome back to Halloween Horror Month. We're going to talk about Totally Killer, which came out last year, and it's the latest in those. Let's take a premise of an old movie and make it into a slasher film. Happy Death Day did Groundhog Day, made it a slasher. Freaky did Freaky Friday, made it a slasher. So this is Back to the Future, but it's a slasher. And while I like this movie, I do have some issues. As a big time Doctor Who fan, I find the time travel stuff in this to be a bit complicated. And as someone who thinks with a Doctor Who brain, it just doesn't work. I'll explain as I get to it. But the story of this is that in 1987, 3 teenage girls were killed on their 16th birthday by someone they're labeled as the Sweet 16 Killer. Now, in modern time, 2023, the killer comes back. The killer comes back and kills the only remaining person left from the friend group, who was the mom of our main character. And so Jamie, our main character, is trying to work with her friend who's building a time machine so they can go back and stop the murders from happening. I'll get into why you can't do that as we go through, but yeah. So first thing I want to address is Kiernan Shipka. Look, she comes across as too condescending in this movie. Like, I get it, she's supposed to be representing Gen Z and everything, and then she goes back to the 80s, and the 80s were unapologetic about everything. They didn't care. But she's constantly, and it's not heavily, but it's like, you can't do that, you can't wear that, you can't say that, just because of where the current generation's headspace is compared to back then, right? Like, there's a character they call Fat Trish, and she's like, you can't call her that. Back in the 80s, they could, and so she's trying to adjust to the differences, but she comes across a little too condescending. Like, it's not just in how she does that, it's like her tone throughout the film. Oh my, this is bad weed. Jeez, mamacita. Just how I don't know, she just comes across a little condescending to me. But yeah, so the opening of this is narrated by Chris Dubasage, who's played by Canadian actor Jonathan Potts. You may know as the guy from Freddy vs. Jason, the idiot that goes, "He just wanted his machete back." That guy. So he is narrating about the killings back in 1987, and that the 3 were killed on their birthdays, the whole thing. And it's Halloween, but because those girls died, her mom, Jamie's mom, is now paranoid. They've actually trained her daughter in the arts and stuff. So, yeah. So, she... Sorry, my mind blanked for a second. So, the mom, played by Julie Bowen, tells the dad, played by Lachlan Monroe, of Freddy vs. Jason fame, to take her to this concert because she thinks her daughter's going to be in trouble or something. But it's her that gets the shock because the killer shows up and kills her. Yeah, she does fight him off a little bit, but ultimately she dies. I will point out that all the stabbings in the past are supposed to be, they were stabbed 16 times. She's only stabbed a couple times here, so I don't think it's 16. They said, maybe I wasn't paying attention enough, I don't know. So now she's mourning her mom, still wearing the jacket her mom gave her, and her friend is trying to build this time machine so they can go back and stop the killer in 1987 so it doesn't kill her mom then. You can't do that. The laws of time travel dictate you cannot do that. You cannot create something with the purpose of going back and stopping something. Because if you stop that, if she goes back and stops the killer in 87, there'd be no reason to build the machine in 2023. Thus, you would create a paradox. So you can't do that. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Doctor Who dictates you can't do that. It'll create a paradox. You cannot create the machine, go back in time, and stop the murders from happening, because then you had no reason to create the machine, and time will fold in on itself. Paradox. Yeah. But she's then attacked by the killer who stabs the machine. She's sent back to 1987. Culture shock and all of that. So she meets younger versions of the future people, like the principal, the current sheriff, and the coach are all younger. Doug, who was the principal in the future, is now the hall monitor, and then you have the coach is the jock, and then the future cop is a stoner, because irony, right? So, and she also meets the three girls who we find out are actually hung out with her mom, who's played by Olivia Holt here, and also one of the friends is played by the girl from Scream 6, who was the daughter of the guy who, the Richie's sister, one of the killers. Spoiler alert. Yeah. So now she's trying to prevent the deaths from happening, and we start out at this party where she's supposed to die. That girl talked about she's supposed to die, but she's supposed to die in the garage. But she, because she's dating this guy who becomes a famous rock star, who the mom does not like, she messes up, and they end up in the bedroom in a waterbed. Let me tell you, as someone, I didn't have a waterbed. My grandparents had a waterbed, and it is not conventional in the least. You cannot sit on it. It is wibbly wobbly. It is not, one of the best things. But she's murdered there instead of in the garage. And this rocker from the future then becomes a emo rocker because he survived being stabbed. A waterbed away, I think, is the song he comes up with. In the future, Chris Dubasage begins to notice the changes. And so he is now working with Jamie's best friend to try to fix the time machine so that they can save her. Yeah. And then, so she starts to investigate who the killer may be. There's a creepy kid who ends up being a creepy groundskeeper later, but it's turned out it's not. And when she proves it wrong, he just wants to make video games. This is where I kind of caught on, because the hall monitor just shows up out of nowhere, Doug, and I went, kind of a weird place for him to just pop up. Almost as if they're trying to remind us that he exists. Could he be the killer? By the way, he's the mayor in the future, so there's that. But then they end up going to a cabin in the woods where the next death is supposed to happen, and they make a joke about weed and how there was actually just oregano, because all the jokes before, though, people thought it was oregano and it was weed, but now here she thought it was weed and it was oregano. She baked it into a brownies, which ended in just Italian brownies, I guess. But the killer shows up and starts killing, but kills the wrong girl because she gets in the way of the other girl getting killed. So now it's all messed up and switched, and so now they're just really trying to find out who the killer is. As it appears, they are getting close to fixing the time machine in the future. Okay. So, I have a question once we get to it, okay? But something that just popped in my head. So, also, Jamie mentions that in the future, her mom and dad are going to hook up. So she's like, oh, so now she's going, like, and the best friend, or the best friend's mom, who now she's working with, says, well, don't worry. You jumped out of stream and got into a different point, and everything's just going to trickle down. And I'm just like, and they're like, if your parents break off, you won't cease to exist. Yes, you will. And it'll create another paradox. Because if she's not born, then she can't go back in time to do all this. So everything will create another paradox. So your time travel rules are stupid. But yeah. So yeah, we also meet Norm Dubosage, Chris Dubosage's father, who in the future has a Pulitzer and is a reporter in the past and still reporting now, reporting on a storm. But he's reporting at this carnival thing that's working in 1987, but not in the future, you know. And so they're setting up everything at this carnival to try to take down the killer. And it almost works, but the killer gets the best of him at first. They take him out, revealing that it's Doug. Yes, the future principal, and that kind of changes the future a little bit. But because it turns out that Fat Trish, who was a girl that died, turns out they were bullied by the Mollies, except for her mom. And so she killed herself. She unalived herself. Or caused her drunken driving accident. And it turns out that she was dating Doug at the time. And another killer shows up. Yes, another killer shows up and starts chasing him, and even kills Norm Dubosage, which gets even frustrating once they reveal who the killer is, because they didn't study time travel before they did this. Oh no. So her and the best friend's mom have figured out to use a gravitron, like when that you get in the thing, you lay up against it, and it spins around. That thing, it's not really safe now, but they use that as a time machine. The killer shows up and jumps in with her, along with her mom, who she later ejects. And then, so at one point I thought, the time machine, because at the beginning they explained that like her mom was working on a time machine, and I thought that's going to be a bootstrap paradox. She takes the time machine into the past and it breaks. It's still broken technically because they didn't get that version fixed. So she's repairing the same one, but no, they don't do that. That would have made too much sense. So the mom gets thrown out, and as she's getting thrown out, she grabs the mask, revealing it to be the future Chris Dubosage. The Chris Dubosage from the future who was working with the best friend. He only knocked out the best friend. He didn't kill her. Not that it would matter, because this puts a gigantic hole in this movie's time travel thing. So as I mentioned, Chris Dubosage, adult Chris Dubosage, was on his killing spree. He stabbed his own dad. And here he says, and now that Chris won't have to grow up with a father who cares more about his career than his own fucking son. Do you know what that does to the timeline? He will no longer be raised by that guy and will not become the man that grows up to kill her mom, which means the reason why she went back in time will no longer exist, and it will, say it with me now, create a paradox. They really did not study time travel before doing this movie. They just thought they could do whatever they want. For all the issues I have with the Endgame's time travel stuff, at least they tried to salvage it to where you could kind of make it work. But, yeah. Yeah. So, Chris Dubosage is killed, splattered against the wall, and she goes back to the future. And this is where she's reunited with her best friend and her best friend's mom. And her mom is still alive, and her parents are still together, but now she has an older brother named Jamie, because her name is now Colette. And then we find out that now Randy is the mayor instead of the coach, because somehow that works. And the current Chris Dubosage is now on a soul-searching thing, which again would change the timeline too much and create a paradox, but whatever. It's frustrating. I will give it a pretty good though, because I did enjoy it. I just feel like there were some issues. You could have refined the time travel aesthetic. I like the 80s aesthetic. They made it very realistic. The mask on the killer is pretty cool. Yeah, all well done. And it's a Blumhouse movie, so I'll be ranking it in my 31 on 31 when I eventually do that. But yeah, pretty good. So what are your thoughts on Totally Killer? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'm Sky, and I'll see you in the next one.